Hello dear students, myself CMA Padmaja Buzruk. I will discuss auditing. Go to study note number 7, provision relating to audit under Companies Act. I will discuss audit certificate. Sometimes apart from an audit report for general use, an auditor is often called upon to give a certificate for special purpose. So sometimes the client requires the auditor to give a certificate, and this certificate is for special purpose. It is not audit report, but it is a certificate which the client wants auditor to give for special purpose. The certificate should include the following. Auditor should see that there is suitable declaration by management about subject matter. Auditor should be very clear about the subject matter on which he is supposed to give the certificate. Auditor should give certificate on his letterhead and on stationery carrying his name and address to avoid misunderstanding. Certificate is to be given by auditor in his own letterhead which carries his name as well as his address. Auditor should clearly state his limitation and indicate the extent to which he has relied upon technical expert, if any. Auditor is not supposed to be expert in various fields. He is expert only in the fields of finance. So he has to state his limitations in the certificate if he has relied upon any technical expert's advice. Auditor should indicate the specific record covered by the certificate. That is, for giving the certificate, which records he has used as proof evidence for giving the certificate, based on which records he has given the certificate, that is to be indicated. Auditor should mention the manner in which audit was conducted. Auditor should indicate in the certificate if he has made certain fundamental assumptions. Auditor should make reference to the information and explanation obtained. Auditor should give clear title to it, indicating whether it is a report or certificate. Auditor should mention whether he has used any general purpose statement like profit and loss account for his investigation, and also state whether that general purpose statement has been audited by other auditors. Auditor should be careful while interpreting any law related matter. He should clearly mention that he is expressing merely his own opinion. So if he has made any fundamental assumptions, he should clearly indicate that. Then if he has obtained any information and explanation, he should give reference of that. He should give a clear title to the certificate. If he has used general purpose statement like profit and loss account for his investigation, then he should make reference of that. And if the statement, that is profit and loss account, has been audited by other auditors, that also he should mention. And he should clearly mention that he is just expressing his opinion. Auditor should see that the certificate should be self-contained document. That is, this certificate is totally independent. He should not mix it with other documents. It should be an independent certificate. Auditor should clearly mention the responsibility assumed by him. Auditor should, if he has referred the audited statement, clearly mention that the figures are used from the audited statements and relied upon. If any figures in the certificate are used from the audited financial statements, then auditor should refer those in his certificate. Auditor should address the certificate to the client or the public authority or the person requiring it, as the case may be. So certificate is to be addressed to the client or the person who has asked for the certificate. In appropriate circumstances, it may be issued by using the words as to whomsoever it may concern. Generally, it is addressed as to whomsoever it may concern. Now we'll see branch audit. Branch office in relation to a company means any establishment described as such by a company. Section 2, subsection 14 of 2013 Act. Audit of branch office by company's auditor or branch auditor. Where a company has a branch office, the accounts of that office shall be audited either by company's auditor, that is, auditor appointed for the company in annual general meeting, or by any other person qualified for appointment as an auditor of the company under 2013 Act. Such branch auditor shall be appointed as such under Section 139 of 2013 Act. When a company has branch office, the accounts of branch office shall be audited either by company's auditor who is appointed in AGM, or by such other person who is qualified to be appointed as an auditor by Companies Act 2013. Audit of branch offices outside India. Where the branch office is situated in a country outside India, the accounts of the branch office shall be audited either by the company's auditor, or by an accountant, or by any other person duly qualified to act as an auditor of the accounts of the branch office in accordance with the laws of that country. So if branch office is situated outside India, then in that case company auditor can be appointed as auditor of branch office, or it can be accountant or any other person to be qualified as an auditor as per the laws of the country. The duties and powers of company auditor with reference to audit of branch and the branch auditor, if any, shall be as may be prescribed in second part of section 143 subsection 8 of the 2013 Act. So duties and powers of company auditor with reference to branch audit is given in section 143 subsection 8 of the Act. Report by branch auditor to company's auditor. The branch auditor shall prepare a report on the accounts of branch examined by him and send it to the company's auditor. Branch auditor examines the accounts of branch office, makes his report and submits it to the company auditor. The company's auditor shall deal with the report of branch auditor in his report in such manner as he considers necessary proviso to section 143 subsection 8 of 2013 Act. So while making his own report, the company auditor will use the report of branch auditor in such manner which is he considers necessary as given in provisions of section 143 subsection 8 of Companies Act 2013. Duties and powers of company auditor in connection with branch audit. Duties and powers of company's auditor, that is main auditor, with reference to audit of branch and branch auditor shall be as contained in section 143 subsection 1 to section 143 subsection 4 of 2013 Act and Rules 12(1) of Companies Audit and Auditors Amendment Rules 2015. So duties and powers of company auditor as well as in with reference to audit of branch and branch auditor are given in section 143 of Companies Act 2013 as well as Rule 12(1) of Companies Audit and Auditors Amendment Rules 2015. Thus, the company auditor is responsible even if branch auditor is appointed. Branch auditor's responsibility to report fraud. Responsibility to report fraud as applicable to company auditor applies to branch auditor. So, whatever responsibilities are applicable to company auditor in respect of fraud, reporting of fraud, same rules are applicable to branch auditor also. It is the duty of the auditor to report the fraud if it is committed by employees or officers of the company to the audit committee or central government depending upon the amount of fraud involved. Now we'll see joint audit. In big corporate, more than one person or firm of chartered accountants are appointed as joint auditor for conducting the audit of the company. If more than one chartered accountant or chartered accountant firms are appointed by a company for conducting audit, then it is known as joint audit. This practice of appointing joint auditor accrues great advantages to the company. In a big organization, the task of carrying audit cannot be accomplished with single individual, so for overcoming such situation, joint auditors are appointed. Big organization, it has huge number of transactions, so it is not possible for one single chartered accountant or one chartered accountant firm to accomplish the job of auditing. So in that case, joint auditors are appointed. Advantages of joint audit: lower workload, timely completion of work, sharing of expertise, improved quality of services, healthy competition, quality of performance. Disadvantages of joint audit: superiority complex of some auditor, costly for small entity, lack of coordination in work, uncertainty about liability of work, psychological problem, difficulty in fixation of work, among other. SA 299, Standards on Auditing, issued by ICAI on responsibility of joint auditor, lay down the responsibilities on joint auditors. The responsibilities of joint auditors are: normally, the joint auditors are able to arrive at an agreed report. That means there should be only one audit report which is agreed upon by all the joint auditors. However, where the joint auditors are in disagreement with regard to any matters to be covered by the report, each one of them should express his own opinion through a separate report. But in case if they do not agree on some matters, then each one of them should express his own opinion through separate report. A joint auditor is not bound by the views of the majority of joint auditors regarding matters to be covered in the report and should express his opinion in a separate report in case of disagreement. If majority of the joint auditors are of same view and only a single auditor does not agree with that, then he should express his opinion in a separate report if there is any disagreement. In respect of audit work divided among joint auditors, each joint auditor is responsible only for the work allocated to him, whether or not he has prepared a separate report on the work performed by him. So, when the work has been divided, the auditor's responsibility is only for the work which is allocated to him. On the other hand, all the joint auditors are jointly and severally responsible, but all are jointly responsible in respect of audit work which is not divided among the joint auditors and is carried out by all of them. In respect of decisions taken by all joint auditors concerning the nature, timing, or extent of audit procedures to be performed by any of the joint auditors, proper execution of these audit procedure is the separate and specific responsibility of joint auditor concerned. In respect of matters which are brought to the notice of joint auditors by any one of them and on which there is an agreement among the joint auditors, for examining the financial statements of the entity comply with the disclosure requirements of the relevant statute, for ensuring that the audit report complies with requirement of relevant statute. So it is their joint responsibility if the work is not divided, and in case of requirement of law, statute, whether the financial statements are as per statute, whether the reporting requirements are as per statute, then in that case they are jointly and severally responsible for the same. If any matter is brought to the notice of joint auditor by any auditor and all of them are in agreement, then in that case also they are jointly and severally responsible. Now we'll see audit of divisible profits and dividend. Declaration of dividend, section 123. Final dividend is declared in general meeting. Board of directors have to recommend a dividend. Declaration of dividend is ordinary business in general meeting. Board of directors recommend a dividend and it is declared in general meeting. Declaration of dividend, section 123. No dividend shall be declared or paid by a company for any financial year except out of profits of the company for that year arrived at after providing for depreciation in accordance with the provisions of subsection 2, or out of profits of the company for any previous financial year or years arrived at after providing for depreciation in accordance with the provisions of that subsection and remaining undistributed, or out of both, or out of monies provided by central government or state government for the payment of dividend by the company in pursuance of guarantee given by that government. So dividend shall be declared and paid by company for any financial year only out of profits of the company for that year which is arrived after providing depreciation, or out of accumulated profits of the previous years after providing depreciation, or out of money which is provided by central government or state government for payment of dividend. Provided that a company may, before declaration of any dividend in any financial year, transfer such percentage of its profit for that financial year as it may consider appropriate to the reserve of the company. So before declaration of dividend, company transfers such percentage of profit as it considers appropriate to reserve fund. Provided further that where owing to inadequacy or absence of profit in any financial year, any company proposes to declare dividend out of the accumulated profit earned by it in previous years and transferred by the company to the reserves, such declaration of dividend shall not be made except in accordance with such rules as may be prescribed in this behalf. If company does not have sufficient profit for the current year, and if it declares dividend out of the accumulated profits of previous year, then the dividend to be declared only in accordance with the rules prescribed for in this behalf. Provided also that no dividend shall be declared or paid by company from its reserve other than free reserve. That means dividend to be declared and paid only out of free reserves. Provided also that no company shall declare dividend unless carried over previous losses and depreciation not provided in previous year or years are set off against profit of the company for the current year. So before declaration of dividend, carry over previous losses as well as depreciation not provided for in the previous year is to be set off. Depreciation shall be provided in accordance with provisions of Schedule 2. Interim dividend. The board of directors of a company may declare interim dividend during any financial year out of the surplus in the profit and loss account and out of profit of the financial year in which such interim dividend is sought to be declared. Interim dividend is dividend declared between two balance sheet dates. So if it is declared if company is having sufficient profit. Declaration of interim dividend if company has incurred loss in current financial year. In case the company has incurred loss during the current financial year up to the end of the quarter immediately preceding the date of declaration of interim dividend, such interim dividend shall not be declared at a rate higher than the average dividend declared by company during the immediately preceding 3 financial years. Mostly, generally, if company is having extra profit, it declares interim dividend. But if company declares dividend and has incurred loss in the current financial year, then Now supposing if company has declared interim dividend on 30 September and company has incurred a loss for the quarter ended 30th of June, then in that case the rate of dividend which is declared should not be higher than average dividend declared by the company during the immediately preceding 3 financial years. Legal provisions applicable to interim dividend. The amount of dividend, including interim dividend, shall be deposited in a scheduled bank in a separate account within 5 days from the date of declaration of such dividend. Entitlement of dividend. No dividend shall be paid by company in respect of any share therein except to the registered shareholder of such share or to his order or to his banker, and shall not be payable except in cash. That means dividend shall be payable only to the registered shareholder or to his order or to his banker, and it is to be payable only in cash. Provided that nothing in this subsection shall be deemed to prohibit the capitalization of profit or reserves of a company for the purpose of issuing fully paid bonus shares or by paying up any amount for the time being unpaid on any shares held by members of the company. That means when company declares dividend, it is irrespective of the issue of bonus shares as well as conversion of partly paid shares to fully paid shares as bonus to shareholders. Provided further that any dividend payable in cash may be paid in either by check or warrant or in any electronic mode to the shareholder entitled to the payment of dividend. Consequences on non-compliance. A company which fails to comply with the provisions of section 73 and 74 shall not, so long as such failure continues, declare any dividend on its equity shares. If company fails to comply with provisions of section 73 and 74, then it cannot declare the dividend. Section 73 is acceptance of deposit from public and section 74 is repayment of deposits. In this particular video, we have seen audit certificate, branch audit and joint audit, and audit of divisional profits and dividend. Thank you.